Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to yet another episode of Faith Matters. Look, I'm no expert in comparative religion, but I can tell you this thing, that growing up, I've always learned that Islam is a religion, the one that we follow, our faith, is not something that is only limited to ritual aspects of worship or is confined to the mosque. It's a much more wholesome religion. It's comprehensive. It governs everything we do. Obviously, the worship aspect is very important. But of course, there is also the way we lead our lives, our day-to-day activities, our family relationships, our business transactions, what we eat, what we consume, how we earn. The way we do everything, Islam has its teachings, prophetic traditions, Quranic commandments that tell us how we must govern our lives. One such aspect, very important to every Muslim, is the consumption of food. Now, you know where I'm getting to with this. Obviously, when it comes to eating food, for us Muslims, there is a clear understanding that whatever we eat must be halal, and that which we avoid is supposed to be haram. And this applies in everything. You take marriages, you take businesses, things that are permissible, things that are impermissible. So it's not difficult to understand that even when it comes to food, something we use, something we consume into our body has its conditions, that this is what you can eat, this is what you can't eat. When you use the word halal, unfortunately around the world, there's a bit of stigma with it among the non-Muslim communities. Now, why is this? There's lots of reasons. But what we have now among various Muslim communities around the world is bodies, organizations, certifying products as halal, certifying restaurants, premises as halal, certifying different things, saying this is halal, this is permissible, certified by a governing body, saying that, we take responsibility to say that you can go ahead and consume this. One such organization that does this in Sri Lanka, in fact, the only one, is known as the Halal Accreditation Council, in short, the HAC. And today on this show, I'm delighted to have with me the CEO of HAC, Mr. Ali Fatharally, who is heading the show here in Sri Lanka in terms of Halal Accreditation Council. Now, I know there's a lot of things, we want to discuss in terms of some of the accusations and some of the crazy things being said all around. Before we get to all of that, what exactly are your operations? When you go as a CEO, it might sound like a big business being run here, but what exactly are the operations of HAC here in Sri Lanka?
So thanks, Sameer, for having me on the show. And the certification body, like you said, itself is about evaluating whether the products are suitable for Muslims to consume or not. And we issue a certificate saying that the products are suitable for within the parameters of what we are supposed to consume.
Right.
So that's on a nutshell of what we do.
So, I understand that one of your biggest responsibilities is issuing certificates, right? So let's talk about this now. If you take 15, 20 years ago, and this is something that everyone comes up to me with, saying, you guys are talking about halal certification, this restaurant is certified, that product is not certified. 20 years ago, my grandfather still used to eat halal food, Sri Lankans were still practicing Muslim. They really need a certificate or a governing body to tell them, this is halal, you can consume, this is not halal, you can't consume. So why now?
So very valid question, Sameer, from what you asked me. A lot of non-Muslims have this concern. If you look at the production system over the 2 decades, has changed a lot. Example, if you go to the market, you see a lot of artificial juices in the shops that you find, all canned juices. 2 decades ago, this was not the case.
Right.
We mostly consume fresh juices.
Right.
If you look at apple juice, we have a berry brand and a few brands today. Today, mostly which we consume is artificial. So this, the system of consumption, the pattern of consumption has changed over the years. Now it's very industrialized in what we consume. So there's less natural things. What I'm coming to is that the production process has got so advanced that they use material that are not halal in nature sometimes to filter it.
Right.
Let me go to the example. Let me go to the example of apple juice itself. Most of the apple juice that we see in the markets are clear. They are, transparent, golden color. If you take apple and you put in the blender at home and you try to make apple juice, you're not going to have the same apple juice that comes through, because it goes through a filtration process. So the filtering generally requires gelatin in most cases.
Right.
The most common source of gelatin in the world is derived of porcine or pig.
Right.
So this is where a few things of non-meat items become a requirement for halal certification. Same thing with vegetable oil. Vegetable oil is not of vegetables, though a lot of people still think it is. It is taken off palm oil. And it's red color in nature. So they use deodorizers, decolorizers to bring it to that transparent yellow color that we see in the market. So this is why I'm telling you that the industry has evolved over the years.
Right.
It requires halal certification.
Okay, so I mean, it's quite interesting. Something so innocuous like an apple juice. You might think, what's so halal about an apple juice? It's just a fruit. But like you said, I mean, there's preservatives that are added to it. There are chemicals that are added to food production. And I think it's because the supply chain of food has become much longer from what it used to be when it used to come to our table. You say that, you know, there is a need for halal certification. Now, what if a company, I start a new business, right? And I say, listen, I want to get halal certification from you because I want to sell to the Muslim market. So what's the general procedure and how expensive is it for me to get that certification? Because that's one accusation you hear a lot, saying, you know, these guys charge exorbitant prices, you know, it's a money-making model. So give me an example. If I want to start a business, you know, I want to start a food truck, for example, and I want to get halal certification. Where do I go? What do I have to do?
So it's halal certification itself is a voluntary system in Sri Lanka.
Right.
So you have to come to our office with a letter of intent saying why you want to get halal certification.
Right.
And you need to apply for halal certification. We have a price card which is very transparent, and if it's something like a food truck, it will be about 60,000 rupees a year, depending on where you're located and things like that. So that is a straightforward process. So then we will analyze your entire supply chain and your raw materials to make sure it conforms with halal. And there you go.
Oh, that's quite simple. I thought it might have a lengthy process. But, okay, so let's say I want to sell to everyone, not only the Muslim community, but obviously if I am applying for halal certification, my entire process of food, you know, manufacturing will be halal. Then comes a question saying, why should a non-Muslim pay for halal when, you know, they don't need to consume halal? It's only for the Muslims. Then how do you tackle that?
Yeah, so basically this halal certification's global phenomena is that it's a system of tapping into the Muslim man's pocket.
Wow, okay.
To give you an example of which we all can relate to, like if we want to buy meat or certain products, we will buy it from Ahmad and Muhammad. But in a Upul or a Chandana wants to sell meat, what they use is a halal certificate to reach us.
Right.
So that's the reason that we have 80% of our clients as non-Muslims, because it's a systematic way of appealing to the Muslims to buy their products.
And I'm assuming a lot of that must be because of exports also to the Middle Eastern countries, I guess.
We have about 50% of the companies that have obtained halal certification to predominantly for the export provision.
Right.
Saying that a lot of FMCG products in Sri Lanka are certified to a great extent.
Well, there you go. So then that's a clear example of, you know, why a non-Muslim should get halal certification, you know, what benefit it comes with. Few accusations going around, you know, even among the Muslim community. Some of them are absurd in nature. Some of them are very ridiculous. Some of them are genuine. You know, let's try to tackle a few in the short time that we have. One thing I read somewhere is that HAC charges an exorbitant price to such an extent that you've made a 800 billion profit after taxes over the last year. I mean, I don't want to believe that, but do you want to shed some light into those figures?
Inshallah, I hope HSC comes there one day. So the niyats are all clear. I hope that we get there one day, but it's far from that. Actually, the turnover of HSC is about 50 million rupees.
Right.
Actually, it's not even 50 million. It's a little less than that. And audited accounts have been audited by KPMG since inception.
Right.
And these are propagandas that have been created for, you know, different interests to create the problems around. So I can tell you with authority that that's not the case.
Right, so these issues were there from the time they started. And I know HSC wasn't the first to start this halal certification process. It was started by ACJU, wasn't it, the Jamiatul Ulama? What prompted for them to give it up and then for you guys to take over something? I mean, you're a businessman in nature, Ali. You've been in the industry, you've been in corporates. So why would someone like Ali take over halal certification as a job for the community over from a scholarly body like the ACJU? What's the reason behind that?
See, if I'm going to answer that question in three parts. I think it's fundamentally important to know how halal certification emerged.
Right.
In a nutshell, the Jamia is in charge of the theological rulings in the country, given the power through a parliamentary act.
Right.
So as they were going on in the early 2000s or the late 1990s, we had non-Muslim poultry manufacturers who wanted to sell to Muslim people.
Right.
So they went to the corner mosques and asked them for a letter saying that this is halal. This became a systematic manner the way it came to the Jamiatul Ulama as theologians who guarded the mosques. Then started issuing halal certificate. Now there are non-Muslim poultry manufacturers who gained 40% market share, additional market share over a couple of months because of this.
Wow.
So this became a phenomena, and globally halal is a trending subject which is growing, because now people are starting to understand the importance of halal and the food manufacturing practices have changed. Then we had the FMCG market who came in, and Jamiyat Ulama started issuing certificates for them. This became a problem about 5-6 years ago when they started questioning the authority of Jamiyat Ulama to do a commercial certification of this nature.
Fair enough.
Now, I'm deviating a little bit there. Why did I say commercial certification? Because as soon as this certification leaves us, all the companies who take it, the non-Muslim companies, are not adopting it because they love the Quran or this lifestyle of the Prophet. It's because it makes monetary sense.
Absolutely.
Right. So now, with that problem that happened 6 months ago, Jamia was not in a situation to issue halal certifications.
Right.
That's when we stepped in, a group of us. It's not only me, and we formed HSC. Why I got involved with this is the community has a lot of people who advise people. There's a lot of people to advise, but there's no one out there to put the head and do it. So me, together with a few founder members, have taken this as an initiative that we want to do it and ensure that there's transparency and sustainability to make sure this happens. HSC is founded as a not-for-profit organization, and it's primarily runs on two objectives. One is ensuring that the Muslim community gets halal food to eat. And the second thing is to encourage or facilitate local businesses to reach overseas markets. Halal is also looked massively as a non-tariff barrier in export trade, in international trade. That's
in a nutshell of why you took over from ACJU. Right, I'm going to ask you another. It might come across as a complicated question, and some of the Muslims might find it a bit confusing. Let's say this: just because a restaurant is not certified halal by HSC, does it make it a no-go area? Does it make it haram for the Muslims?
No, that's a complete misconception that is created amongst people. See, Islam is very simple. I'm not a theologian myself, but I work with a lot of them. So the ruling in Islam is each one has the right to choose what they want. And if you think something is doubtful, you leave it. If you think something is good enough to consume with your knowledge, you can consume it. It's not for anybody to judge. A halal certification system is a thing that certifies.
It's an assurance.
It's an assurance that is given with a lot of tried and tested, internationally renowned systems to evaluate the product.
Okay, that's pretty simple and straightforward. And so let's say if I go to a restaurant and I'm fairly satisfied with the response given by them over there saying that their food is halal, it's up to me to eat it. It doesn't make me a sinner.
It doesn't make you a sinner. But saying that, you see, there are a lot of complicated things in, like example, a 5-star hotel, if you go to, they have the same butchery. I visited about maybe 20-30 5-star hotels in the country.
The issue of contamination.
Yeah, so there is a thing called contamination. When they use the same butchery for the pork and the chicken, and it can be contaminated when you eat it. So you won't know, but entire processing, they say, is done separately. Mostly the freezers and the butchery is the point where contamination takes place. But from I'm going out of the scope of what I'm generally doing,
please, you're most welcome
is that from a theological ruling, still the ruling remains that an individual has the choice to make of how they want to consume it.
That's the beauty of our religion, isn't it? I mean, it gives you the freedom to do what you want, but at the same time lays down rules and regulations, guidance for you to do what you want to do. I mean, see, you might ask, what's the big deal about halal certification? Why are we so concerned about it? Because the one thing I've learned is consuming that which is not halal affects your spirituality. And I think as Muslims, for us, that is something very important. Our life is a journey up till the end, and we are only meant to grow spiritually as a community, as individuals. And you know, that's where success lies, both in this world and of course in the hereafter, inshallah, if we do make it there. One last question now. Talking about all these crazy accusations coming your way, you know, saying that you guys are funding terrorist activities, Allah save us from something like that. You know, you guys are charging exorbitant amounts. What is the HSC doing about these things? How are you trying to counter these arguments and, you know, bring in more transparency? And what if an individual has a question about halal? Where do they go? Who do they speak to?
Okay, I'm going to take it back a little bit to give a framework of what is halal, which a lot of Muslims are unable to explain. It's a pathetic situation that we're practicing Muslims. When a non-Muslim asks you what is halal, they just say in God's name, cutting the neck. So it's very different from that. Halal, the ruling of halal is that everything is permissible to eat apart from 8 things primarily which you're supposed to look into.
We're getting quite technical now then.
I'll touch into 3 areas which I think everybody can digest. One is dead animals. We're not allowed to consume dead animals. So if you look at the poultry industry, in the process of the bringing in the poultry into the slaughtering house, there's an accepted level of mortality that takes place, 1 to 2% depending on the infrastructure areas that are there. Now, when you don't have halal certification, generally these dead animals are put on through the system and sold out.
Right. Okay.
So we ensure that the halal product does not have any dead animals.
Right.
So there are 4 halal checkers in that who's a part of the company itself.
Okay.
And they ensure from unloading, slaughtering, bleeding and defeathering that the birds do not have any blood in the system.
Right.
Now, the blood is not good for any human being, whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim.
Right.
It's not because when you have blood in the system, it gets mixed with all the muck inside and it can become poisonous when you consume.
Wow. Okay.
So that's one feature that we look is dead animals. Other one is blood-based products.
Right.
You know, for sausages and things like that, to get the red coloring and to keep the homogeneity in the product, they use blood in certain places. So we make sure that it is not there. Other thing is we look is for hazardous and harmful items. Hazardous and harmful items is the government has a list of permitted items.
Right.
But there are industries who get these things out because it's cheaper to manufacture.
Right.
Now, when we go there, we identify these things and quarantine it based on the government requirement. So indirectly, it's like a government job. So this is the essence of halal certification.
Right.
So there are other things like carnivorous animals and birds of prey, insects, and so on and so forth. But the 8 items. But I have given 3 examples which are very practical that not only Muslims, even non-Muslims don't want to consume.
It also ties in with the whole hygiene factor.
Exactly. So halal goes always with halal and tayyiban.
Right.
So what tayyiban means is pure.
Right.
So when we go in for audits, we make sure that there is no toilet doors opening to the system. There has been plenty of cases where you get a small area in commercial space where they open a toilet door to the production.
Wow, okay.
And we say, no, first is observation, second is a non-conformity, and then we will even revoke the certification.
Wow, okay.
There's been instances when we saw the workers using the toilet bowl after the hand shower doesn't have a place to keep, so it comes back to the toilet bowl.
Wow.
They use it and go back again.
I've seen a lot in public spaces.
So this is reality.
Right.
And these are approved good institutions eating with hygiene practices. So when we raise a non-conformity, factory manager is very upset. Why are you touching that? But then we explain this is the whole hygiene concern.
Right.
So it goes hand in hand of it. So that is the essence of halal certification itself, which we look by for non-Muslims. What is the other question?
Now to answer my question, what are you doing about all these accusations being leveled?
See, this is if you need to again look at this, get back a little bit and look at this. This is a very, it's a political agenda that has been carried out.
Right.
It's not from one specific government. Of my analogy is that both sides, every government has used it for their advantage.
Right.
It's a very effective political tool. Why it is an effective political tool is most of the things you certify is like yogurts, infant milk powder, milk powder, flavored milk, spices, not spices of course, but confectionaries and things like that. Now this appeals to the community at large.
Yes.
So when you trigger this, it affects everybody. It affects the masses.
Everybody has to use these things.
So you even the poor, rich, everybody gets affected. But whereas if you attack a temple or a mosque or something, it's mostly that locality people who get upset. We've seen a trend always when there's close to some big political decision to be made, this gets uplifted.
Right.
So this is a thing that has been happening. I'm not blaming the non-Muslims for coming up. This is an organized system, and this time it's very much more organized, like you seeing the riots and all of that. It's a part of a bigger picture. From our side is we have not, a lot of accusations are coming, why haven't we gone on social media, denied this, denied that and all of that. We've taken it right to the top. From a board point of view, we have decided to take it all the way to the president. And we have written to him formally asking him to carry out an inquiry on all the allegations, where the money is going, what the turnover is, are we funding mosques, is it a not-for-profit organization, what are the systems, who's giving authority to issue the certificates, all of these in nature. So we've also met the Speaker of Parliament, we've met a few of the people, and we're trying to initiate a committee to investigate into this. This is the action that we have made. How the people can get in touch is they could always use our hotline. We get a lot of calls in the hotline that come in. We've got a social media space, Facebook, and all of that. They could reach us in any way and ask any questions that they want to clarify. Also, our app is available. At the moment, we've downed some of those for certain reasons. However, on the near future, it will come on, so anybody can keep in touch with us.
Very good. Open lines of communication with HAC. Their website, I've been to it. It's quite comprehensive and easy to understand. Thank you, Ali, for talking to us. It's been
one more thing to tell, Sameer. Sorry.
Please, go ahead.
So there's a lot of association with Jamiyat Ulama and HAC.
Right.
Which, not that I'm saying that we don't need the theological requirement for HSE. HSE is an individual company formed by a set of 11
Right.
professionals, and our dealings with the theological rulings is with the Jamiat Ulama. But other than that, we do not have any transactions with the Jamiat Ulama. The community needs to be more responsible when they talk about halal.
Fair enough.
With the most of the non-Muslims that I met, the policymakers, and they said that it is the Muslims who come and tell us. It's a system of filtering money of the non-Muslims and going through. So it is very important to be responsible when we communicate. So HSC is an open office. You can come in any time. You can approach us. You can call us. We've got enough people ready to talk to you all. So don't talk something without validating it unless you all know what it is. It's a big problem in the community.
You know what? That doesn't just apply to halal. It applies on everything. You know, social media has made it possible for people to say anything they want. But as responsible Muslims, we have to be careful of what we say and what we do, because it could lead to consequences that we might not know of. You know what? This is the only episode, Ali, that I've asked lesser questions and you've answered more. You have given more answers. So Jazakallah, thank you for talking to us. And I hope that that conversation with Ali, I mean, it was a small conversation, but I'm sure it has helped us shed some light on some of the issues surrounding this word called halal, and hopefully you've got the answers that you're looking for. But like Ali said, you could always reach out to them through their social media pages, through their website, give them a call on their hotline. If you have any queries or doubts, they're here to answer. Communications lines are open. With that being said, we thank you once again for watching this episode. I certainly enjoyed it. A lot of clear clarifications, a lot of education with regards to halal. Until we see you again in the next episode of Faith Matters, this is your host, your brother in faith, Sameer Yoonus. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you.